Good evening. I wanted to take a moment to welcome all of you guys. My name is Rebecca Newman. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, and I see a lot of students and faculty here, but some guests as well. So I wanted to take the opportunity to welcome you to our campus. Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, or we call RMCAD, is a four-year private art college, fully accredited four-year private art college. It was founded in 1963, and we've been on this campus just over 5 years. We offer Bachelor's of Fine Arts degrees in 7 programs ranging anywhere from fine arts to interior design, communications design, game art, and a few others. If you're involved in the art community at all in Denver, you probably know some of our faculty who are all professionals in their fields as well. And we are very committed to the community as a whole, to our students, and as evidence of that today, if you walk around our campus, you'll notice we have our annual student exhibition showing throughout the campus in both galleries in this building as well as our other 2 galleries and in some other buildings. There's over 250 pieces of work installed from most of the departments and all years of students. This is the only time of year that all years, freshmen through seniors, are displayed on campus, and it's 250 pieces of the best work of our current students. And it's shown every year. We are very honored to have Rick Valicenti here today with us. Here to give him a proper introduction is the visiting artist, scholar, and designer program coordinator, Anna Mascorella.
Thank you, Rebecca, for the introduction, and thank you all for coming tonight. I am proud to bring you the 6th installment of RMCAD's public lecture series, part of the Visiting Artist, Scholar, and Designer program. The VASD program is an interdisciplinary initiative that fosters vision, creativity, and innovation by bringing leading artists, scholars, and designers to campus. Providing direct access to contemporary art, design, and culture through an inspiring comparative framework, the program creates a cross-disciplinary environment made possible through appreciation and critical inquiry. As the coordinator of the VASD program, I am honored to introduce tonight's guest, Rick Valicenti. Rick Valicenti is the founder and design director of Thirst Chicago, a firm devoted to art, function, and real human presence that has been influencing the design discourse internationally since 1988. In October 2006, Rick was awarded the prestigious AIGA Medal, the highest honor of the graphic design profession, for his sustained contribution to design excellence and the development of the profession. In 2004, he was awarded the AIGA Chicago Chapter Fellow, and he has been a member of AGI since his invitation to the group in 1996. Rick's work has been published in practically every major graphic design publication, and in April 2005, the Monacelli Press published a monograph on the Thirst work entitled Emotion as Promotion. The 2006 triennial Design Life Now featured Rick's work at the Cooper-Hewitt National Design Museum, and selected works have been included in the Museum of Modern Art, the Cooper-Hewitt National Design Museum's permanent collection, and the STA Chicago Design Archive. Among these many accolades, Rick juried the President's Design Awards for the National Endowment for the Arts during the George H.W. Bush and Clinton administrations, and he has been nominated twice for the prestigious Chrysler Design Awards, as well as numerous awards from the AR100, STEP, New York, and Tokyo art directors, ID Magazine, the AIGA Year in Review, to name only a few. Throughout his career, Rick has presented in cities throughout the United States and across 6 continents. Recently, he gave a presentation at 2009 Design Indaba, the world's largest annual multidisciplinary conference in Cape Town, South Africa. And this past January, York College of Pennsylvania hosted an exhibit of the works of Thirst in the show Curiosities, Rick Valicenti and 21st Century Thirst. This evening, Rick will provide insights into the responsive and inventive thinking he directs within the Thirst studio in an effort to make a difference by design. Thank you all for coming tonight, and please join me in welcoming Rick Valicenti.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I'm not going to hide right away behind the podium. Thanks, Anna. That was like too much copy. Too much text. We should have cut a whole page. I know, it sounded tiring. It really did. Okay, so first of all, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Ad, for putting in the good word. Thank you, Fred, and all of your colleagues. And especially thank you to the design students who I've had a chance to meet and hang with in the past 2 days. It's been more than invigorating and eye-opening. I've been sort of inspired. So I'm taking good energy. I'm also taking great energy from the show of all the disciplines here at RMCAD. I had no idea that RMCAD was certainly where it is in this quirky little campus, but at the level that it's at. And I just want to say, I kind of wish I was looking at this vista. So invite me back all the time, okay? Tonight, what I thought I would do, I thought that most of the conversation would be directed to the students, even though in the lobby I saw designers who were my age. But the conversation that I'd like to have this evening is really tailored to the design student or the young design professional. And I want to just shed some light on a practice that I keep. It's a presentation while I've sort of looked at some of these pieces of work that I'm going to share tonight with other audiences. I've done that. I haven't quite put it in this order. I also want to tell you that as I move through this conversation, I'm going to work on a stream of consciousness. There's some things that I do want to leave you with, but I'm not exactly certain in what order they'll find their way to you. I also want to say that at any time, feel free to leave, because I thought it might be a fun thing to sort of do a Bruce Springsteen thing on you, where I just stay up here as long as possible and see if I can be the last person in the auditorium. Now, I know that's kind of rude, because some, like this dude right here in the front from Austin, Texas, he might go, right? And then you can race back there and no one will even know. It'll be fine, okay? They won't get you on videotape. But in any case, we'll see how long I can go. I also wanted to remind you that there will not be any clients that you recognize in my presentation. I don't know how this happened, but my practice, while most of it now, and I think since the 21st century, most of the work does exist from Chicago-based clients. And my clients, for the most part, are other people who practice design. They either make design, sell design, create design. You know, that's sort of the world. And I think that is an evolution over 30 plus years of practice, where I have moved my audience, if you will, or my time at the conference table to like-minded people. I remember as a young designer I would say, I only want to work for people who get it. And I never really knew what that meant. You know, I would say it, but it was like, well, what does that really mean? I've come to discover now that when I'm at the conference table, when I'm in conversation, when I'm in research, when I'm in presentation, I'm doing it with like-minded people, people who will embrace a new term, they will embrace a kind of level of curiosity, and they tend to round it up. You know what I mean? 2.5 is really 3. Because the other person is going to go, it's kind of 2, you know, 2.25 at best. So I like being with other designers because we tend to be catalytic. And before you know it, we find ourselves in the, can't do that zone. We like to call that the discomfort zone. And it's there on, in that discomfort zone where you're kind of close to the edge, where you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You stand here and there's a little bit of risk attached to it, especially if I was tipsy. And you go, oh, he did a Christina Aguilera on us. Okay, so with that spoken, let's click. Oh, also, tonight we're going to sort of weave in and out, at least I am, between these facets of what I think is a healthy practice. Work, play, experimentation, process, research, a little touch of philosophy, some methodology, and of course the occasional anecdote. And I just heard myself getting a little touch of feedback, so I'm going to zoom that baby back here. Okay. Ready, set, go. Certainly this is the headline, all right? And it will be the headline for a while. But not only is it a headline, it's a reminder to all of us that the real-time world that we live in is a kind of a byproduct of both technology and communication design. And we can see it here, you know. These sorts of devices that graphic designers have put in place, I don't even need to give them titles. Doesn't matter what they're called, you know. This sort of look and feel, if you will, is the sedimentation of communication for the next 90 years, you know. When you're in practice for 10 years, they'll be saying, that's the way we always do it. Well, it's emerging right now, the way we always do it. So if the communication designer today thinks that the way we're doing it now maybe could be better, it's really important to raise your hand and say, what if we do this? Because if you don't, sedimentation will build and we'll be on a kind of solid foundation of this, whether we like it or not. You know, it took a long time for the Toyota Prius to create a vinyl texture for the dashboard that didn't look like it came from a cow, right? It took a long time to go, oh, well, just because it's vinyl doesn't mean we need to make it look like it's leather. Some designer went, kind of a lame idea, that leatherette. And it changed. Okay, there's a lot of people still like putting leatherette on your dashboard. No cow was harmed in the making of this dashboard. You see, graphic design is everywhere. And yet the bookish designers in us are going, well, I wouldn't really indent a paragraph like that on the left. You see, everywhere. Color coding, information graphics. I thought it was appropriate to sort of lead with this piece here. I came in from the airport the other night. There was a big stallion there at the airport, and come over from the hotel, and there's another big stallion at the stadium, and then you look into the stadium, and there's another one, and I go, Kyle Orton. And then I want to say, thanks for Jay Cutler. Okay, thanks, I know. My cousin lives in Steamboat. He told me, he said, you know, be careful, that Jay Cutler, he's not great. Well, a year ago, I was asked to celebrate a local paper merchant, and they're called Unisource. And it was their 20th anniversary. They invited a handful of designers in Chicago to make a poster. I made this, and they asked me and said, why did you make that one? What is that? And I said, well, I don't know. I was thinking of your name, Unisource, and then I went Uniforce, and then I went Unicorn. Like, fine, it's done, ever since I was 20. So I just thought I would share that with you guys here. In every situation I come in contact with a designer or client, there's inevitably this comment, we can't do that, it's been done before. Now, if we were in cooking school instead of art school, that would never happen. They would never look at an heirloom tomato and say, I can't make pasta sauce, it's been done before. Right? They would actually encourage the young chef to approach the recipe through that tomato and bring with it their own sensibilities, their own sense of taste, their own approach, and their own considered decision-making, which in essence is what design is. A little of this, a little of that. Should I go here? Should I go there? Right? So I think when I look at this slide here, I look over on the left side, and I see Herb Lubalin, right? 1970s, early 70s, doing avant-garde type. And then in the middle, while these are all intentionally orange, I see Rudy Vanderlands, and I think a touch of Von Oliver with the 4AD doing their sort of expressive tabloid cover. And then in Chicago just this year, a young designer named, at a studio called Plural, and his name is... It's eluding me. Okay, never mind. He's mortified right now. We can always see a kind of thread of form making that connects us as designers. And sometimes it's because the function is encouraging it, and other times it's just because it's part of the way humans communicate. This poster, designed by David Carson in 2008, unintentionally looks very similar to this graffiti work by a young street artist in Chicago named Nick Adam. But Nick Adams' work also recalls the abstract work in the mid-century by Stuart Davis, the painter. as a designer, I'm like always in school. I didn't go to design school. I did my undergraduate work in painting and drawing at Bowling Green State University. Could not get a job upon graduation because there was the first recession I had encountered. And so I spent 2 years as a United States steel worker in Pittsburgh, where I grew up. And then that was the fastest trip to applying to graduate schools. So I applied to 7 schools, 4 in painting, 3 in photography, got accepted to all of them, and chose the University of Iowa in photography. I don't know why, but it was like a kind of blessing. I came back from Iowa to Chicago in my pickup truck and thought, I'm going to be a photographer. And when I looked around and I saw the kind of work that the commercial studios were doing, I thought, I don't think I want to shoot, cornflakes and hot dogs or hamburgers at the time and beer. And so I thought I'll be a designer because I'd taken a letterpress class. And little did I know that I knew very little about design. And on those interviews, from one photographer introducing me to an art director and an art director introducing me to another art director, I discovered that I was the sort of pimp thing that was going on. Like punking their friends by sending me to them to waste an hour of their time. But I did 50-plus interviews, and along the way, I discovered how they did it. I would ask a lot of questions like, let me see what you're working on, how'd you make that layout? And back then it was like ink pens and Plaka and magic markers and rubber cement. And I would run after the interviews to the art supply store, buy the materials that I saw on their desk, and go home and make a portfolio sample. And after 50 interviews, I had what I thought was a pretty solid portfolio. I still did not have a job, but I had literally salt stains on my little navy blue suit from perspiration, and I ended up answering an ad in the local paper for a keyline artist, which is really a production artist. Right now we go, package file, done, keyline's over. But in any case, I took this job because I had good hand skills. I lasted 6 months, and the woman told me, she said, you're so overeducated, you're going to be so bored. She stuck me in a windowless room with one other person who didn't talk to me. And so I spent some time there, and then I was unemployed again because I left the job. My breakthrough came after having accepted a job as an insurance form keyline artist who got to do the occasional cafeteria flyer. I got an opportunity to go to a design conference in 1978. And that conference was put on by Ad Vogel's grandfather, and it was the Ichagrada Congress. There in the lobby was an exhibit by the work from Catherine McCoy's first year at Cranbrook. And her student work, to me, having done the insurance flyers and forms, looked like it had come from another planet. And on stage was Ralph Kaplan and Massimo Vignelli and Milton Glaser, and I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know what they were talking about. And I saw for the first time, Helvetica type set really tight, and I saw Manhattan maps and Massimo's metro signs from Washington, D.C. And at breaks, I would go hang out by the reception area where a woman was very nice. She was perhaps my age at the time. She said, why aren't you talking to anybody else? Why are you hanging out here? I said, I don't know anybody, and I'm really not a designer. She said, oh. I said, you're awfully nice. So we would chat, and finally I said to her, is there anything I can do for you? You're really making me feel at home and less nervous. She said, well, as a matter of fact, there is. I need you to do, I need some maps on my table tomorrow to say what languages are being spoken at what houses and where the parties are in Evanston. I said, oh, I can do that. And I'm like going, I know just what Massimo's maps look like. I'm going to do like the Manhattan map of Evanston, Illinois, but I'm going to pull an all-nighter doing it. And that morning I bring in 2 little pieces of photostat 8x10 on foam core with a cardboard easel. I put them on her desk. I've cut out everything. It gets worse. When I was setting the type in the insurance company, we had a headline machine. All the type was really set on an IBM Selectric, which was a little thing. You'd change the ball, you'd change the font. And you'd do like this, and it would go around your head like Palatino Times, Univera. But they had a headline machine in the dark room, and since I was a photo student, I'd go in there, and it would be like this. The safety light was on, and there was a little dial that had the alphabet and number set on it. It would go, right? A, K. And every time you did that, you had to pull the piece of 35 millimeter photo paper out of the machine. The amount of space you thought was required so that the letters didn't overlap. Right? And so then you get this thing, you run it through the processor, and you discover that you've just made like the worst kerned piece of headline typing. You spend the rest of the time X-Acto blading it and cutting it up, and then, of course, filling in the overlap. So I did that, and I said all the things, Helvetica type but not touching. So that's how I got in. So the punchline to this was, at the end of the conference, I thank her, and she goes, I don't know how to repay you. Those maps were fabulous. And, of course, I didn't go to the party. She said, would you like to meet a real designer? I said, yeah, I really would. She said, my husband's a designer here in town. Well, it turns out he studied with Monacelli Press at the Institute of Design. I didn't know that this guy, 62 years old, Bruce Beck, had done print magazine covers and featured in CA Magazine. But he's sort of winding down his career as he heads to 65. And she said, come on over. He's here in Evanston. So I go on over one night after work, but I have to pass through his senior designer to get to him. And if she thinks I'm okay, she'll let me see Bruce. So she did. That was her trip to my portfolio. Trying to talk over it, forget about it. So she lets me see Bruce, and he does essentially the same thing. And at the end he goes, he saw one piece of letterpress type, and he goes, I hate your work. He said, but I love your style. I love what you did for my wife. I love how conversational you are. I love the fact that you're teaching yourself to be a designer. And you just haven't figured it out. He says, I need a darkroom assistant, and I need someone who can ink my type work and get it ready for presentation. I said, I'm your man. I got great hand skills. I can do it. So I was the 9th employee. 3.5 years later, he has navigated my career to be the president of the STA. 3.5 years later. He retires, and I'm unemployed. So that's when I started. That was April Fool's Day, 1981. That's my little career path. Okay, just to make certain that I stay in school, however, a couple of years ago I signed up for Milton Glazer's master class at SVA. There's Milton in the middle, tallest guy over everybody. There's Milton. There's Rick next to him at the right hand of Milton, actually left hand. And there's Marion Banshee. She was in the class as well. So here's the three. There's Milton. There's Marion. There's Rick. Right? So I remember on the first day, there's a young guy. Everybody had to be a pro. But some young guy had snuck in. He was all of 20 years old, and he's there in the front row, and I'm in the front row like the overachiever. And Milton looks at him, and he looks at me, and Milton knows who I am. And he goes, how the hell am I going to reconcile the space between the two of you? And Milton, like that guy on The Simpsons, he'd walk like this, that old guy. Smithers or something, I forget what his name is. Burns. And Milton was great. He would go nonstop. I think I'm just getting a little dose of Milton right now. But in any case, he just said he was going to be himself, and so I am going to do that as well. Sometimes I make dumb things. This I made as a sort of an image that I did a little, stereolithography of what I thought the Iraqi War Memorial would be, sort of somewhere between a peace sign. There it is, sort of emerging from black oil with the industrial complex grid on it. And it's a little bit Christian, it's a little bit of everything right there. I don't think anyone will build it. I find myself working, again, for designers. And this particular design opportunity was for a school that teaches architects and urban planners to work on problems related to urban infrastructure. They call themselves ArchiWorks. An architect named Stanley Tigerman created it 15 years ago, and I was asked to take some of the content that the students had been working on and make a large tabloid. So it looked like this, it's just normal type, and the occasional center spread. We look at some of the students, and we show some of their pictures, But I got to this spread, and this spread, some students were working on the issue of water consumption and its health in the Great Lakes region. And there was a factoid in the caption that said, 2 billion gallons leave Lake Michigan a day and go down the Chicago River to the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. And they never come back. With a little bit of research, I discovered that that's a lot of water, for starters. And we're the only city in the Great Lakes area. That's an international thing, 2 countries. We're the only city with an exemption that allows us to take from the Great Lakes and not put it back. So My daughter is an aquatic biologist working for the Department of Environment in Chicago in the water quality division. And I said, you know, Lynn, are there any designers ever at the policy-making meetings? She said, no, there's no designers. I said, is there any sort of, filmic work to position arguments? Is there any sort of interventions at the public space? She said, no. I said, well, maybe we can do something about that. So we created an intervention on water last summer, and I put out this call. This was done in a flip camera with virtually no editing. It was just sort of real time. I had preconceived where we were going to go. My assistant, Bud, was the cinematographer.
Hello! Hello! Can you hear me?
It's Rick being that Verizon guy, you know.
Hello!
A water motif, it's the backdrop.
Can you hear me? Hello! Can you hear me?
It's funny how I move my hands when I scream. That building is called the Aqua Tower. Looks like water.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
So I invited designers, and it turned out that 16, then became 17 designers, artists, and educators signed up for this 6-week workshop. We opened it with attendance at a conference called Infrastructures for Change, and we put a real-time blog that showed our speakers who would come in. Every Monday night there would be a variety of speakers that included Bruce Mao, and there would be architects and urban planners and artists and activists, and then on Tuesday night there would be the policy people, and on Wednesday night we would work and we would make things, and then during the weekends we would put them out into the city. And sometimes we just made little business cards, and one of the guys made this. He's a young art director at the MCA. But our interventions over the 6 weeks migrated throughout the city in all of those spots. Even the mayor got a little desk plaque that said, we really need to talk. And we concluded with 2 things. One was this website, which is called itsourwater.org. So check it out if you'd like. And it has a kind of curated look at some of the examples of interventions, not all of them. And we also did a parade. But along the way, I was asking the designers to be one with the subject matter. And one response was that people wanted to paint graffiti with water. And it seems very sort of counterintuitive to be subtractive. But it turns out that there's just enough soot on the white underpasses that you could scrub them away. And so they did some really interesting work, and they did them all throughout the city. Other people would bring slide projectors to the beach and speak about, the good old days when the beach was a place where families could go and you wouldn't have to worry about E. coli washing up after a rainstorm. There were posters that were put up around town that did 2 things. One, it introduced people to the website, introduced people to the parade that we were going to have at the end, and it introduced them to some of the facts, like how much is 2 billion gallons. It turns out that after these interventions were done, 2 major policy groups in Chicago have come to the moving designers and said, we need you to convert our PowerPoint into something more compelling. Please make a film for us. Can you make a brochure? Da-da-da. And they bring these things to the meeting, and the day after the mayor said he was not going to run, he came out and he says, we are going to pursue reversing the flow of the Chicago River. Right now, it goes the opposite direction. It doesn't go into the lake. 100 years ago, they changed it with an explosion one night, and they send it away from the lake. Now, all of that came from the filmic work, I think, that was sort of in play at these meetings, and there was a bit of a, if a river could make a tsunami, we like to think that design did that. So here we are. There was jewelry that these people make and T-shirts, And the parade started at the Water Tower Place, the last standing building at the Chicago Fire, there on Michigan Avenue, and I represented the 2 billion gallon man. I led this parade complete with police escort, and we had a couple hundred people walk behind a cop on a Segway. And it's amazing when you dress in a goofy outfit like this that people come up and meet you. You know, they just like, hi, how are you? And this lady was like so excited to be with the 2 billion gallon man. It's like, oh, baby. But here we are with our baptismal picture. That work led to a position that I earned from doing that and the ArchiWorks book as a board member for ArchiWorks. Well, as a board member, I was there one evening when, well, it turned out like this. The director said, we have just been invited as one of 7 groups to participate and represent America in the Venice Biennale. And every other year, the Venice Biennale deals with the theme of architecture. I said, wow, that is fabulous. He said, but there's a sad part to the story. When the curators actually saw what our students had made, they didn't want it to be part of the show. So we've been disqualified. I said, no. And here I am, like at the board meeting, outspoken. I said, tell me more. They said, well, they just didn't like it, and they didn't want to ship it, and they didn't want to put it on a boat and take it through the canals. I said, what is it? And he described it as a portable food court that they made that could go into neighborhoods and teach people about growing, urban agriculture, give them seeds, show them how to make a compost pile, have cooking lessons, bring a farmer's market to it, all kinds of things. And the students had done a really good job of programming and researching, but it wasn't quite built, and what was built wasn't so attractive. I said, well, listen, write them a memo when you get home tonight and tell them that you're going to just need a wall so you can project a film the size of the object. And when the public stands in front of that projector, they'll have their shadow there, and they'll look like they're actually engaged with that object. We're going to make this film about 3 minutes. We're going to make a kind of eye candy. This is the storyboard for it. And we're going to make this thing express the entire program, and I'll even feature the students in the film. They go, really? And the board's going, can you do that? I said, we just need a little money from your donors to put this thing together. So here I was speaking about something that I really didn't know I could do or direct, but we ended up doing it. And we did 1 day of live shooting. I engaged one architectural renderer who happened to have the model in 3D of the city of Chicago, and then the rest of us. And so we needed to express the fact that this mobile food court, as they called it, could deliver worms for those who were making compost piles, or deliver seeds, teach people how to rake and grow. So we wrote it. We wanted it to be, here was my brief for design. I said, I want it to be so snappy and so short that when a person goes into a room, and we all do this when we go see like a video projected, and we look in and we go, it's a video. You're at the art museum, you go, right? So I said, we want to make it so that they go, that's pretty cool. Let me just spend a minute. And then they spend 10 seconds and it changes and does something else. So that's what it is. And the whole program needed to be expressed. So we had a bit of a checklist. So here we go. Ready? Oh, and there is a bit of motion capture. I'm sort of a fiend of this thing I call real human presence. So whenever possible, I want to sort of incorporate it. And I wired up one of the guys in here, you'll see which one it is, to be a barker. And so at the beginning, the opening sequence, he's going, come on, take a look. Okay, so here we go. And that's it, and it just kept going. So here we are, that was our little shoot, okay. One day of shooting. Okay, you don't need to see the credits. This is the studio that we work in. It's in a old printing place, actually. This is where the executives used to look out through that orange wall down onto the press room floor. And it's a leftover gallery in a place that sells, or auctions, I should say, 20th century and now 21st century modern furniture. We work in this little pinwheel with a power post up the middle. We have 2 of these in the studio. And it is very, very easy to collaborate this way. On the wall, you can see over on the far right, we see a John Massey poster. In the middle is a Bruce Malles, signed Greiman and Glazer, and then, of course, one of 10 posters that Rand made for a retrospective exhibit at MoMA. And I keep this work kind of in flux on the wall, everything from Weingart to a Frank Gehry sketch of Millennium Park to a Sagmeister. And the reason I keep these things on the wall is so that the designers in the studio recognize that we're in the continuum of communication. We're not just in, design starts today. It doesn't. And here, when Saul Bass came to town, he signed my paycheck envelope. That's all I had. Paul Rand, a note to the printer. The printer should match these colors carefully, Paul Rand. So, thirst. This is Bruce Beck. This is the man that I worked with. And in the city, it's fabulous. We have a great history. Mort Goldschall was also in that early class at the Institute of Design with Grigori Kepish and Moholy Nagy. And Mort did this for Motorola back in '55. It's still out there today. But it's influenced other people. Chester Jenkins, he was at Thirst for 9 years. He now bought the Thirst Type Company and moved it to New York. It's called Village.com, VLLG.com. And Chester did this alphabet, kind of a Motorola riff. And then a new guy who's come to town, his name is Darren McPherson, just did this in 2009. So again, that was just to show us that, you can do something, but it's your own sensibilities that make it unique and of the moment. That takes me to the issue of identity. I've always been curious, you meet somebody who's like your height, and they kind of look like you, and their hair's like you, and then you begin to wonder, are you really like me? And the same thing applies to what we do as designers. If we give somebody the code of design, we give them, it's Helvetica, it's a wide measure, flush left, ragged right, 4-column grid, sidebar open, headline, 18-point on the top. Right? If you give them that code, they go, oh, that must mean equals, right? If you lay in a little light blue, equals healthcare, right? Change it to red, furniture, Target, right? So I ran this little test. I was going, what if I put an ad in the local free paper and invited people to come if they look like the drawing that was me? I wanted to see who saw themselves in that icon. And to me, that kind of looked like me. It said, is it just me, right? Is this you? And I would pay them $10 if they showed up on a Saturday morning. So here we go. I knew that I would make a brochure, a small one, about this big, and put them in the order that they showed up. I would also use a new typeface that we were developing called Apex, and here they are. And what I find so interesting isn't that I did this book, isn't that the layout is kind of predictable. It's that these people saw themselves in me, or at least in what I thought was me, that little sketch. And these 2 guys weren't even related or together. They just look like it. And when Jose showed up, he was 52, I was 51 at the time, and it's like, man, I got to get my picture taken. You're a Scorpio, I'm a Scorpio. These 2 guys come independently, their pierces just moved. Not related, look at those eyes. And it's the same guy with hair, like iron filings. So then, after I had these pictures, what am I going to do here? Where's the real sort of second read to this? Where's, besides the stunt aspect, where's that sort of thread that makes this maybe more meaningful to someone not a designer? So I took everybody on the left side of the spread as I searched for the archetype, and that's what they look like, even percentages of layering in Photoshop. Did the same thing on the right, and then, of course, did everybody. And it's like, wow, it did work as an experiment. There's a little bit of me in everyone. That same sort of thing led me to study this masterful piece of typography that Paul Rand did for the Yale Press. And I think just a year or so ago it was discontinued. But I imagine what it would have been like if I was Paul's assistant. I know what I had to do with Bruce, but what if Paul said to me, yeah, hey kid, here's the graph paper, make it happen. And I would have inked the thing out, or I would have done it with tape or whatever, and so I kind of studied that thing, and I traced it, and then I started to riff on it. And I had done a couple years of sort of like riffing on Rand's Yale logo, as if it was me sort of like channeling Paul. And then I would study his contour line drawing, right? The beautiful contour line work. And it led me into a type book here, a little alphabet book that was done of just sort of digitizing and making real my own sketches from the sketchbook. So this is design as illustration, if you will. But I was also there to help a printer who needed to show off a new press. And you can see here's the kind of Rand motif happening, and there it is. Look at that thing, it's just beautiful. And there's a kind of quirky moment in it right here. It's like it would have been so easy for him to have just nailed that horizontal, but it just like bounces. And I think that's because I think this whole digital thing that we're in right now is like that, Hurry up! I think in the old days it was different. In fact, I watched it. In the pre-digital age, you'd have a piece of paper on the board and you'd move it around. You'd have another project going over here, you move it around. You have some sketches, you move them around. You go to lunch, have some wine, come back, move it around. And pretty soon it's perfect, and you go Joseph Mueller-Brockman and Armin Hoffman and those guys. It was just right on. And today we never give, at least I don't know about you guys, but I rarely give myself a chance to sink into the work. But here I am just playing this is Paul Rand meets Harry Potter meets Darby O'Gill and the Little Ones, or whatever that weird movie was, where some horses were running through flames. And there's that little bevel on the Harry Potter thing. And I'm conscious when I'm doing work for an urban planner, I'm looking to what Frank Lloyd Wright may have done. Here's my response. Chicago has great history. See, I'm just bouncing in and around. Here, to me, it's fascinating just to always know that I'm in the same place that other great designers were. In fact, a guy said to me, he said, someone stole the plaque off of the sidewalk in front of Moholy Naj's house. I wrote back and said, where was his house? Turned out it was blocks away from where I live. It's damn, that's pretty cool. So Art Paul, he was the co-founder of Playboy and the designer of that logo. But Art was also a kind of masterful art director and typographer. And so he would do this, and I would riff, 7 years later, digital fashion. I wasn't really too focused on legibility, but either was Paul. And of course, there's Stuart Davis, and I look at Stuart Davis's work, and I do my version of it. And then that whole Stuart Davis lineage passes into a young guy here on the right. His name is Will Miller. He works at Firebelly in town, and he's also doing the kind of dimensional graphic thing. And you can see everybody's sensibilities are different. I bet if we went to the other side of Stuart Davis, we would see it in somebody else. In 2008, I had the pleasure of being a chairperson of the world's largest student design conference. We had 875 students come to Chicago, and this was the poster for it. I don't know why I show that, I just like the poster. It's the Chicago Bean. It cost students $100 to get in. There's the egg. The egg is cracked, it oozes, it drags your eye all the way down here to the URL. It says here, for students only. And then in some very abstract type, like the skyline, it says AGI Chicago 2008. I know, legibility. And the legibility takes me to this. I'm kind of curious, we live in a world where we can just say something. We live in a world where you can stop reading type and you can just recognize type. You don't need to see a logo type anymore. You can just go, oh, that's, and it's, oh, it's the swoosh, or oh, it's the new MIT logo, or whatever. And I was curious here, there was a group in Chicago called the Third Coast Audio Festival, which have a show that's syndicated on NPR called Resound, and they needed a new identity, and they put out a proposal. This was our proposal recommendation to them. And I was so excited about it. Usually we don't do spec work, but I said to the guys, this one's not for them, this one's for me. I had it completely conceived. It's one of those rare moments where the team is a kind of implementation mode, but the parameters of it were well spelled out. And it said, let's grab an MP3 from the head of the Third Coast Audio Festival and have her say, Third Coast Audio Festival. And we took the sine waves and we said, sound is round for the most part, right? From iPad interfaces to records to speakers. I'm sorry, iPod, not iPad. Now, when we talk, we introduce a phrase with what they call an attack. It's when the word starts. Rick, Valicenti, those are the attack things, and then it trails off. And you can see that flat line, Rick, Valicenti, does that. So the thought was, let's just put the attack in concentric circles, and let's start the attack at noon, and wherever they wind up, on the other 4 rings they would, and the volume would yield a contour, and the pitch would be averaged, and it would yield a color, and the color would come across here, and then it would quickly create a triad, and you'd get your palette. So that's kind of the simple brief for it. And everybody would be plugged into one of a number of different kind of formal translations of words from the lexicon associated with audio. And in this case, there were words like vibration and bandwidth and transmission and whatever. So here we are. Every card holder with digital printing would be able to version off their own card. Every letterhead would be different, whether they came from the people working there, whether they came from the audience who could call in. And those people who would be there could be also subject matter for us when it was time to do posters or postcards or web banners. And the graphic would migrate back to the epicenter of the ear on their profile. The type was a bit of a kind of reverse magnification or megaphone. And those were the actual people with their actual renditions of Third Coast Audio Festival. And we built a website where you could actually hear everybody and see their variation. When the person wasn't available, their voice recording in visual form would become the graphic. And it makes great public art and makes great bus stations. And it competes with the Hollywood product that's on construction barricades. Well, that project led us to this project. Some designers, interior designers, asked us to make a video piece for a room they were designing in a showroom at the Merchandise Mart, our big version of the design center here in Denver. I said, why don't you just rent Blade Runner, the director's cut, and just stick that up there. It's cool, or 2001. They said, no, we want something custom. I said, well, tell me about the room, and they went on to describe how it had sable carpet, and it was this is a sick room here. What do you do in this room? This is not for sports. I said, this is the love room, isn't it? So I said, okay, if you want me to do this for you, I'm the curator, right? I usually don't do that. I usually am very collaborative. But in this case, I said, I gave him the Heisman. That's it. I make the final call. So I picked 5 pieces of love music. And the brief in the studio was 3 of them were going to be in After Effects, 2 of them were going to be in processing, and we were learning on a learning curve in both of those platforms. And I wanted to make certain that the audio dictated the visual. We had a little bit of a visual concept or construct, and then the audio signal pulsated the visual. So here we go. I'll just do little clips, and you'll just understand my curating of music. Love songs. Where's the volume? We need some volume on this baby. But I want you to just see the little drum solo part, okay?
Honey, you need it. I'm gonna give you my love. I'm gonna give you my love. Oh,
Want a whole lot of love? Want a whole lot of love? Want a whole lot of love? Want a whole lot of
Okay,
love?
you guys, you don't need to see it. Okay, that's enough. So the other one we did was a Radiohead song, and it had just been done by a designer, a programmer at UCLA, and the conscious moment in the studio was not to run from it, but was to make conversation as if we were jazz musicians on the same stage, to say, you did that bass riff, I'm going to do the piano riff, and we'll talk to one another. So from across the country, we did this with the same Radiohead song. Here we go. This too is in After Effects. Oop.
I don't wanna be your friend. I just wanna be your lover.
I just love that. Okay, that's enough of that one. Okay, this one was done in processing, and again, its concept was very simple. I spelled it out like this. I would like Jenny Holzer to meet Dirk Diggler at the carnival. Okay, and the Jenny Holzer show had just happened at the MCA, so we all knew what the racing marquee looked like. The Dirk Diggler is just because of the song. But the carnival were those big lollipops you get that look like a pinwheel. And so if the lollipop equaled a marquee LED dot, what would happen? Here we go.
Don't have to be beautiful to turn me on. I just need your body, baby, from dusk till dawn. You don't need experience to turn me on. You just leave it all up to me. I'm gonna show you what it's all about. You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. Ain't no particular sign I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your kiss.
Okay, and the last one, there were 5 total, but I want to just share this one with you because it is one of those moments, and I saw it today in some of the portfolio presentations, where the designers are asked to go out and look for references that on the surface have nothing to do with the final project. You know, they're just sort of like in a big space doing some research, and they're picking up textures, whether it's, you know, photographs of areas where it looks like a letter form. This one was to invite the courting moment to be expressed through the code of birds flocking and fish sort of moving around. And what could happen if we took the basic simple code of boys are blue, girls are pink, put them together, did a little courting, and then ended up at a moment where we could have digital calligraphy that was unpredictable. So the calligraphy is really these pieces of code running over the contour of Bodoni, and it'll look a little soggy, but I'll end at the word sugar. Here we go.
I've been really trying, baby, trying to hold back this feeling for so long. And if you feel like I feel, baby, then come on. get it on. Sugar, let's get it on.
Oh, that got me real excited. Okay. And then sometimes I'm just being goofy. I was asked to explain my process for an exhibit, so I went to one of those websites that sells clip art, and I just put some clip art together. I thought that was the design process. I didn't know whether I was the clown on the whisker or the monkey on the whisker. Okay, so some of this human presence work started in 1998 for Herman Miller in a showroom where I was asked to take the marketing brief and bring it to life. Herman Miller prides themselves in being an innovative furniture manufacturing firm. They're the ones who gave birth to the Eames and the Nelsons, and just keeps going. It's a guy, Alexander Gerard. But they had some new furniture to introduce, and they had a bunch of marketing messages like, our furniture's stable, our furniture is agile, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought it would be a good idea to wire up a couple of dancers with early generation motion capture and make a 53-minute video. Yeah, the presumption of it all. I started off with the last frame of Eames's Power of 10, which is the molecules sort of vibrating, and that's where I started. And every motion and every color sequence was dictated by the body motion. And they ended up in this industrial design work that we did and signage for the showroom. And there it is, the new logo that Stephen Frickholm had just designed. He took George Nelson's crown and stuck it in a circle, and that was a response to the new digital pixel presence of their logo, which was kind of falling apart. So here's just a quick glimpse of it. And this is a glimpse of a test that we did that kind of proved the concept. It has no sound to it. So we made a bit of an Alexander Calder wireframe, and sometimes the wireframe was part of the scene, sometimes it wasn't. But we've been kicking this idea around for a long time, and then, of course, along comes Avatar and says, you guys are rookies. But I just want to run this because it's pretty exciting what can happen, especially if you're the architect. We started off with these dots. I mean, it's really pretty basic, tinker toy. And it's kind of clunky, and you can feel how jittery the early motion capture was. It was a little bit staccato. We see that now on, Monday Night Football. They have that little transformer guy in the corner. But here, when you do an Oscar Schlemmer Bauhaus costume, look at that. It's like, architects, eat your heart out. Okay. I have a couple more. You guys out of gas yet? Okay, I can keep going? All right. For the young designer who gets this kind of brief, look, we want you to do a trade show exhibit, but everything we have here you can't really talk about yet. But we want everybody to get really excited, and we want them to go, and we don't even have a website. Okay. But you better make a website for us, right? But you can't say anything. It's essentially what the College for Creative Studies did when they introduced a new MFA program. They had not received accreditation, they didn't have a faculty, they didn't have a chair, they didn't have squat, they just had an idea. And here in Denver was the AIGA conference. So we put a little 10 by 10 booth, and we had this little light bulb form. There it is right there. We did a little custom carpet, and we did a back wall, and we thought we were going to have an unmanned, as they call it, not to be sexist, booth that had some sound going. And we were going to run a video on this Dell computer monitor that we took out of its shell and put a piece of mirrored plexiglass in front of it so that you could still see through it, but you'd see yourself. And the theme was See Yourself at CCS. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips of the 4-minute-and-a-quarter videos we made on 4 of the basic themes. One was that they had an international reach. 2, they had a business relationship with the Ross School of Business, so they cared about strategy. 3, they had an emphasis on transportation design, and they wanted to attract students from China and Korea and Japan. And 4, they believed at the heart and soul of their institution was business, culture, and design. So here we go. We made all the music, all the visuals, and conceived it. And we made this little exhibit. This is a terrarium that we turned upside down and put a piece of little flexible plastic that you can roll up, and then it goes and flattens out, and that became the base. And we put a little hole there at the top. And that's how big it is. That's me and my young associate, John. He's been with me for 7 years. And we're standing on our little carpet. So this is the storyboard. And we're going to start with the first one. In the lower right corner is a set of flags. There's 150 countries. We took all of the national anthems from those countries and layered them together, just like that experiment we did with the faces. And so that theme you hear is like the universal anthem. Okay, the next one is somebody walking up the ladder of success, and there's little diamonds and stuff, of course, success, and the sound now is coming from the New York Stock Exchange Bloomberg reports. This one down here, the sounds are coming from car doors slamming and keys, blah, blah, and the last one is just an anthem that John wrote, which is like the world is ending. And down here, you'll see a little motif here, which is a muscle car, because the thing is flexing, and that's our Detroit reference. The other thing to keep in mind is the layout is intentionally familiar. It's right out of like Fox News and CNN. It has the scrolling type. Don't do scrolling type in After Effects because it starts to get staccato. We learned that in the 11th hour. Okay? And we did a little sound cue of these spinning globes. Here we go. First one, just a taste of it.
Design.
Oh, stop. I want to stop here. I'm going to go back. We didn't have any money for a voiceover, so we layered all of the text that I wrote through those voices in Mac. And because those voices in the Mac are a little hard to understand, hello, my name is Rick, we built a chorus of them. So if I said, hello, my name is Rick, the chorus of other voices would say, hello, my name is Rick. So if you missed it the first time, you got it the second time. So here we go.
Design.
That's the national anthem.
Thinking and implementing is essential to business success.
The designer's way of seeing, thinking and implementing is essential to business success.
Okay, got that. Here's the ladder to success. Oh no.
Understand the dynamics of commerce.
Understand the dynamics of commerce.
Study principles.
Study principles.
Okay. Muscle car.
Culture. Study design within a broader humanistic and historical cultural context. Logic and argumentation.
Here comes the tire.
Composition and rhetoric. Ethics and teamwork. Communication and intellectual curiosity. Environmental sustainability.
Okay, so you get the idea. And I'll just give a taste of this one.
The designer as maker is the heart and soul of this institution.
The designer as maker is the heart and soul of this institution.
Design transcendence.
Design transcendence.
Okay, so right now, if I can use the metric of success, they have 22 grad students in their second year, which is phenomenal, and all but 4 from other countries. So they have encountered a problem. As we went to market this program, we put an international slant to it. They just didn't realize that language now would be an issue. So they're dealing with that. I'm going to just click through a couple more examples of this work, and I want to just close by saying you've been a good audience. So, here we go. It's okay to be looking at other people's work. I do all the time. I want to just see how the world vibrates and vibrated through them. And I'm enamored by the work of illustrator Ben Shawn. This is some of his late work, American Illustrator, pen and ink, post-war, kind of comes out of the WPA as well. So this is an ad illustration he did, both in illustration and calligraphy. Now, a few years ago, I had the privilege of being invited to go to the Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing. Min Wan, who will be here actually in the fall, he used to be the design director at Adobe, he invited me to go over, and from the airport to the Central Academy of Fine Arts, it was odd. I passed the Central Academy of Finance, the Central Academy of Engineering, the Central Academy of Basketball. And in China, if it says Central anything, that's like the bomb, right? That's like the Central Academy of the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design. That's what it would read. Okay, so the point I want to make here is the next day I was getting over jet lag, and I went to the Shanghai Art Museum. And the Shanghai Art Museum is 4 floors, and every floor is devoted to a different art form. You know, they have like the bronze and the iron and the ceramic, and the top floor is their highest art form, calligraphy. And there in one room was this big-ass scroll. It must have been as long as the stage, and it was like this deep. And there was what looked to me like the same character over and over. I mean, it was a big character. That must have been one of those really loaded brushes, like this. And I don't make fun of this because this is like amazing. And then the calligrapher just do this again. But the whole piece was covered in a rash of chops, those little red stamps. And I said to my translator, you know, what's the deal? How come the calligrapher went nuts with the chop? And she goes, no, it wasn't the calligrapher at all. It were the people who came to see the piece. They could feel the breath running through him, she said. I went, oh my God. In fact, right now when I say that, I get kind of like goosebumps thinking that communication design can express the breath running through the designer. Think about that. Think about how fucking generic our work is, right? Do we ever sort of reach out and like give somebody our breath? It always ends up one-to-one anyhow. One person's clicking on the website, one person's looking through the book, one person's sort of reading a billboard. And when they saw it, they went, they like retweeted, right? Got it. At the same time, I paid a visit to an integrated medicine doctor. I was in a dark period, and this woman was at Northwestern, and she says to me after my first appointment, she goes, well, I see you're a creative person, your vitals seem to be in good shape, you could use a little help on the diet, you're getting close to obesity, blah, 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 and she goes, do you journal? And I pull out I said, yep. She goes, nope, let me see what's inside. And so there was like meeting notes, a couple of little thumbnail sketches. She goes, this is not journaling. I said, well, what's journaling? And so she gives me a piece of paper. And I read it, and of course it was to sort of get the toxins out of my body. So I said, okay, I'm up for the challenge. I'm going to fuse the Sumi ink work on paper, and I'm going to fuse journaling, as she described it, for myself. But I don't have the learning curve, right, to learn how to do this. So I'm going to go get a device that I can apply ink to paper. I got a foam brush at the hardware, and I got a turkey basting syringe at the local grocery store. And I said, I'm all set. So I took my Mies van der Rohe apartment, and I moved the furniture out, and there I am looking over the skyline at Lincoln Park, and in a year's time, from New Year's Eve, yes, it was a bad night, I started on New Year's Eve, through Halloween the next year, I did 575 journal entries. And to really sort of up my own sort of trauma, I bought expensive Reeves paper, Reeves BFK, that was like $3 a sheet. So if and then I added insult to injury, I did it vertically, because I know there's no undos when you're using ink, and the ink with gravity would come down, and it's like, damn, a vertical stroke right there on my composition that I had pre-visualized. So I quickly had to like move that in. So it's kind of sloppy, but I watched over the year the line quality calm down. And while I'm not really demonstrating so much calm now, you should have, here we go. So this is my little studio. This is my living room. Had my Dan Electro guitar. And then I made a little film and I made a book. So if you go to rickvalicenti.com, you can see all of them in rough chronology. So here we are. This is a kind of drunken film of them. Just some of them. Okay, so you get the idea. It's kind of boring here. 1, 2, 3. That's a good one. End on. Okay, and done. All right. So I made them into a little book for the hell of it. Front and back cover, like prisoner of myself, happy guy at the end. And there was a sort of logical design process to create backgrounds. And here are some of the pieces. And see how calm the line quality got there at the end? That was like about the last one, 2008. Okay, now we can either do a Hoboken, as our final piece, a Hoboken 9/11 memorial, or we can do work for the Wright auction house, a corporate identity systems work. Which would you prefer?
Right.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to wade through some of these pictures, so you kind of get all of it here. I'll go slow and do the kind of thing. Influences. Oh, you don't want to hear about that project? Right. I have to tell you about this project because this was the precursor. This is the climax here. This leads us into Wright. And this sort of connects the dot between self-initiated research and client work. A lot of designers who I know, and I used to be one of them, would wait for the opportunity to do that thing I always wanted to do. And I have to say that opportunity for me to do the thing I always wanted to do never came. And when it did, I tried to shoehorn what I wanted to do into it, and then I found myself in some adversarial situation with the client, arguing for a layout that had absolutely nothing to do with what they wanted. Right? So the lesson is, just do what you want to do. And then you'll be better informed when that opportunity comes. And somehow I think it's a bit like Oprah Winfrey's secret. If you do it, there it is. So I asked a question in the studio one day. I was kind of upset because I'd walk around to client meetings saying, yes, we practice intelligent design. And soon that term started to mean something different than what I thought it meant. And then I was kind of upset because I couldn't place a photo after 30-some years of practice into an InDesign layout with Command D any faster than an intern who was right out of school. And was like, something seriously wrong with that picture when I can't work faster than somebody. So my 30 years just went nothing. So I went into the office. I said, okay, here we go. I got some things on my mind. I want to put them together. I don't know exactly how they're going to work. But I want us to take the book of Genesis in 7 days, and I want us to convert it first to binary code, and then... See, I was kind of upset, too, with, Pepsi 1 had just come out, and then, it seemed like a month later, Coke Zero. And I could just hear the meeting at Coke, They did 1 calorie, 0. Give it to me. You could just hear that one. It's like, whoa, okay, 0 it is. And neither of these packages were particularly nice. And I thought, where's the millions of dollars worth of focus group testing? Is this what the best design should look like? Well, in any case, I said, we're swapping every 1 in the binary code with a Pepsi 1 can and every 0 with a Coke Zero can. And we have the red and blue states that can duke it out, right? We have the color-coded branding, the color-coded politics, and we're going to call this baby intelligent design. So here we are. I made a tabloid. And what we had to do in these 7 days was to teach InDesign to place a photo. Not 1 photo, but 1,600 photos on a page in under 15 minutes. It's the kind of stuff that if you were a monk, right, in some monastic place, you'd be like... And then underneath, we had to teach, since every character in binary code is 8 characters, we had to teach InDesign to underscore it. So if it was in the beginning, it would be in, I, N, and then underscore that like a parenthesis to say in. And then, of course, if the word ran long, it had to go like this, so there had to be arrows. So here we go. So this is how it starts off. We have the evolution of man, and then the de-evolution of like culture, right there with intelligent design and these terrible packages. And zooming in a little closer, well, you can't really see here, but there it is. There's the gilded ink underscore. And then to make things even worse, I didn't have these as photographs. I had them as live traced 5-color pieces of art. So the rip on this was terrible. The printer said, never, ever, ever do that again. And then to really sort of like add a layer of pretense, I made silkscreen prints in limited edition, the actual size of Andy Warhol's first Campbell soup prints, right? So I had like the 1 and the 0. I don't know why I did that, but it's just... So that's what the page spreads look like, and it just kept going. 24 pages until at the end it said God saw that it was good. Well, I shared this with a client that I had been working with, Richard Wright, and he was about to do a book show of 5,000 book titles. And he said, I need to show off the new logotype you're drawing for me and do the book title, or a book catalog. Can you make a catalog design for me that's very inexpensive because I'm kind of broke? So I said, okay, well, why don't we go to like Pikes Peak Litho, where they do those really big posters. So I ordered one as a sample, and I brought it to Richard. I said, this is it, Richard. We're going to put all 5,000 books on like a big map of book titles. And when we were all done, we tried to fold the thing back up like a Rand McNally map, and we ended up with this like, it's like dumb. So I showed him this intelligent design. He goes, why don't we just do that? And so this is what we did. Those are the books. That's the new logotype. The books are in categories, so we have a color coding system. And we taught in design to give each book a 1/2-inch strata. There it is. We set the strata, the point size, based on the largest description. We set this very simple device up here so we could maximize the amount of depth. We just had these little gutter columns that told the lot number and this. And then, here's a good example. Lot 16 covers, 15 covers actually, 4 covers here in a lot. They were kind of packaged. So Photoshop needed to give a colored drop shadow by category and then pre-place and determine the size in a 1-inch square of those 15 covers. Or 4 covers. It needed to just know, and sometimes it was just 1 cover. And this thing just went, it was amazing once we had it kind of coded. It took about a week to code it, and it took no time to lay it out. And when it ended over there, and then we just did this index by hand. Or what is by hand, by clicking. Well, that gave birth to the idea of a workflow system to automate the design process. Now, in this Wright auction house, they have 5,000 pages of design catalog work being done a year by one designer. They have a website that's updated all the time, one person. They have one photographer photographing 5,000 pieces of design work and making multiple points of view of each one. They have one researcher, and they were continually missing their deadlines. And by missing a deadline, they had to pay overtime at the printer and extra FedEx cost to deliver these very heavy catalogs. It was the biggest single expense they had was their overage in wasted time. So they said, what can you do to help us? I said, well, the best thing we can do is collectively figure out how to use this system of automation to automate your entire workflow. So that all the designer has to do is do the layout, but with one single keystroke, a complex set of type specs, vertical rules, baseline shifts, font changes. It's the kind of stuff that InDesign has in it right now, which is called the nested style sheets. This was pre-nested style sheets right here. That kind of stuff was one click. And at the end of every day, 3 memos went out, one to the researcher, one to the photographer, and the designer kept one. It said, on page 5, you're missing this. On page 6, you're missing that. And so they had their to-do list for the next day. The layouts then would just be open to the designer. She, in this case it's a woman, could do it however she wanted. And then we were able to just show them how this same kind of automation could make cover designs at will. But we ended up doing this kind of cover design. It was very simple. The right logotype went up the spine. Their important auctions would be one in black and one in white. And then it gave us more time when they did other shows in the gallery to have fun with the logotype. This is for the Mass Modern show. And there's the Mass Modern catalog. The same system works regardless of the perimeter size. And then we did a brand extension when they went to the 21st century. And when they started to sell the work that didn't sell in auction right away, so you didn't have to wait for an auction. So that's the program. And then occasionally we do for them special catalogs. This one for a Pierre Koning house. This is one of the modern houses that you'll probably recognize here in a minute. It uses, I think we're using Verlag or Whitney. No, we're using Verlag, which was done for the Guggenheim. And the photography is done by Julius Schulman. And he was 93 years old when he photographed this for us. That's his classic work. He had shot the house originally. And we asked him to come back. He brought his assistant. I thought, well, he's going to bring like a young guy, right? His assistant was 57 years old. He brought the same 4x5 camera he did originally. And here's his new shots. And he shot the whole house in 2 days at 93 years old. And then at the end, we invited 6 different photographers to go for a day to the house and shoot something. That book led to this book. This is for a Louis Kahn house in Philadelphia. I went out 2 days with a photographer named Todd Eberly, who shoots for Vanity Fair. And the typography here in this house was purposely a little bit more academic, a little more East Coast. Kahn was at University of Pennsylvania. It uses Occiden's Grotesque and Sabone. It's a flush left, rag right, a little discreet cap work as the top folio. We, had a more contemplative passage through the house as we'd sort of wait for light to shift. We'd highlight details. And in the kitchen, the house was done for Wharton Eschrick's daughter. And Wharton Eschrick was a furniture designer who did not use 90 degrees anywhere, so the type went flush right. The grid was articulated in a 0.4 rule. And at night, we photographed the house through the windows. Ended the book with a paper change, went to the Penn archive and got some of Kahn's drawings. And I think the last project here on the right is this catalog, which is a little bit different. It was designed for a furniture collector out of, I think, Denmark or Scandinavia. And he's attributed with creating the Absolute ad campaign where they would change the graphics on the bottle for every ad. So he had a kind of comic sense about his work. And it arrived on the right warehouse floor and was like, what the hell are we going to do with this? Here we had some, 800 pieces or something. It was ridiculous. So I invited the young designer. I said, just go photograph every one and turn them into like little playing cards and come back in a couple days. And we're going to see if we can make some sense of it. So we started off with an organizational thought like, okay, we're going to put all the desks and all the tables and all the chairs. But there wasn't enough of anything to make chapters. And as we started to shuffle these cards, we sort of went into a quiet one-on-one editing process where we would go around the white table and just move things. And we were giving ourselves permission to stop when we both agreed. And when we were done, we discovered that the way to sequence the work was chromatically. So here it is. Again, the same system. You can see how complex the type is. That would be a very hard piece of work if you didn't use the nested style sheets. And then in the 11th hour, the furniture collector writes and he says, I'm sending over the work I would like to use for the cover. And it's like, dude, that train has left the building. And you can see we gave a little clue there on the title page, the short title, we just showed the color sequence. So we used his work on the inside front and back, we created a gatefold. And this is my last piece of write work. Again, sometimes we're asked to market something that doesn't exist. This light was going to sell for $300,000. It had never been built before, and this is all we had, and we had a month to market it. The designer was in Paris. It's like, what the hell are we going to do with this Illustrator drawing? So we thought it would be a good idea to talk to him on the phone. We recorded the phone call with a little microphone next to the speakerphone and made that storyboard with a narrative arc that sort of built up to a climax and began to taper off. And it showed up like that on Richard's website. And here's a glimpse.
My name is Arik Levy, and this is my first great exhibition in America. So I have a very strong relationship with nature because
Okay, you get the idea? And then finally, there was, when the show was actually done, Eric had this to say, and you'll see the light.
When Rick first talked to me about this idea, I could only imagine something in my head, and when I saw it the first time, it was, like people say, I've seen the light, but I've seen the voice. And that is a fantastic experience, because the vibration of the voice that I feel when I talk in my throat has been totally transmitted into a visual. And the fact that we are zooming in and out, and it's about space, that what's voice is actually filling up.
Okay, that's it. Turn off. Don't let anybody see anything else. The show's over. Okay? I'm done. Thank you. Okay, let's see how long I went here. Oh, guys, you're like incredibly patient. That was 2 hours. Was that 3 hours? Was it 3 hours, huh? Was it only an hour and a half? Oh, that was okay. Well, thank you for being a good audience. If you want to have any conversation, I'll stay here. Those who don't can split. If you don't want to have any conversation, I'll just stay here.